the purpose of this training is to teach the people how to restore their voice in government, and to make citizens more competent, and take back control of our government, and to take down rampant corruption that's going on in our government. Let me take this off of screen share. So the Tennessee Constitution, this is our shield and armor, the Constitution, and the Declaration of Rights is our sword. This is how we assert our power over government. So I'm going to share my screen again. I'm going to walk you through some of the Constitution, and I'm going to explain to you what they're talking about in our Tennessee Constitution. And the breakdown here is half the people in this state don't even know that we have a Constitution. And we've got a government acting grossly, blatantly in violation of our state Constitution. Everything that's wrong, all the dissatisfaction is because the Constitution is being violated by our government. So how are we going to fix that problem? And that's what I'm teaching today, is how do we assert our power and take back control of our corrupt government. So let's take a look at the Constitution. Share my screen here. So this is the Tennessee Constitution. It starts off in the preamble that the delegates ordained and established the Constitution and the form of government for this state. And that is to say that all power is inherent in the people, and all three governments are founded on an authority instituted for our peace, safety, and happiness, and for the advancement of those ends. They, the people, have at all times an unalienable and indefeasible right to alter, reform, or abolish government in such manner as they may think proper. These are not empty words. This is our state constitution that every senator, representative, governor, judge swear an oath to uphold. So we have a constitutional right to alter our form of government, reform our government, reform acting in violation of the Constitution. We have a constitutional right to reform them. I don't want to abolish government. We need government. There's a lot of important aspects to provide for our peace, safety, and happiness. But I want to alter our form of government and reform it. And I'm going to teach you how we're going to accomplish that. And let's look at Section 2, Article 1, Section 2. It says that the government being instituted for the common benefit, the doctrine against arbitrary power and oppression is absurd, slavish, and destructive of the good and happiness of mankind. So this apathetic attitude of our citizenry, just sitting back, not providing any oversight of government, and we see the oppression, tax mandates, mask mandates, business closures, churches shut down during the pandemic. That is for us to not protest that, to not demand reform of our government acting in violation of the Constitution. It's absurd, it's slavish, and it's destructive of the good and happiness of mankind. Now, if we don't start to fix this, our parents were lazy, and their parents were lazy before them, not performing their civic duties, overseeing government. And we see where we are today. If we don't start stepping up, our children are going to pay a far greater price than we are today, and the corruption is going to be far worse. Let's skip down to Section 31. And most people, I myself, skipped through this because it's such a long section, and I thought it was just defining the limits and boundaries of the state, which is what it says here, the limits and the boundaries of this state declared hereafter mentioned. And it goes through, from this latitude to that longitude, from this river, so on and so forth. But we get down here, and it says, these are within the boundaries and limits of this state, over which the people have the right of exercising sovereignty and the right of soil, as far as consistent with the Constitution of the United States, recognizing the Articles of Confederation, the Bill of Rights, and the Constitution of North Carolina. Okay, so the important part here the people have the right of exercising sovereignty. Go look up the word sovereignty. It means the supreme ruler. The people are the supreme ruler. This right of soil, that means citizenship as a birthright, is what that generally refers to. When they say right of soil, it means if you're born here, you're automatically a citizen. So we see in Article 1, Section 1, that power is inherent in the people, and we have an unalienable. Now, a lot of people mispronounce that word unalienable, and they say unalienable. It's unalienable, and that means you can't place a lien on it. It can't be sold. It can't be transferred. It is always within us. We see that we have a right of exercising the right of exercising sovereignty. We have the right to exercise our supreme power, and we have the right to reform government in such manner as we may think proper. So how do we accomplish that? So we know from the Constitution that every state official swears an oath to uphold. We know from the Constitution that power is inherent in us, and that we have the right of exercising sovereignty. So how do we accomplish that? And let's go back here to Section 23. And this is the heart of my work, is to restore this right. This right it's the cornerstone of our constitutional system. And it is from this right that all other rights flow. Section 23, it says that citizens have a right in a peaceable manner to assemble together for their common good, to instruct their representatives, and to apply to those invested with the powers of government for redress of grievances or other proper purposes by address or remonstrance. Now, in other classes, I'm going to be going a lot more in depth into this right, but there's two important parts in here. We have a right to instruct our representatives and to apply to those invested with the powers of government for redress of grievances or other proper purposes. So a proper purpose would be we want to reform government, or we want to alter our form of government. And we have this right of exercising sovereignty. So what do these mean? The right to instruct our representatives and this right of sovereignty. Well, let's go back. I'll take you off. Did I not have my screen share on? Wow, I'm sorry. I meant to share that, but I'm going over Section 23. I'll show it to you real quick here. This is Section 23, right to apply to those invested with the powers of government to instruct our representatives. Sorry about that. I thought it was on share. So let's go take a look at what that means in here. So I'm going to show you, this is a 2-volume set. If I can get this in the camera here. So this is a 2-volume set. It's a Bill of Rights, a documentary history. And these are kind of extensive. I photocopied from in that book so I can share it on my screen with you a little bit easier. But you can pick this up. This is on Amazon, and you can see this Bill of Rights documentary history. They're going for $300 on Amazon. This company's selling it for $764. I've seen them as much as $2,000 for a really good, well-maintained 2-volume set. But they're very expensive. But let's look inside this book and see what. So this is from inside the book, Bill of Rights, documentary history. And what I love about this book is actually talking about what happened in the first Congress when they were talking about ratifying the first 10 amendments in our Bill of Rights. And so this was Saturday, August 15th, 1789. And they were talking about this right to instruct our representatives. And so you can see here, Mr. Tucker moved that to insert the words to instruct their representatives. So they actually considered this in the first Congress to include the right to instruct their representatives. And they spent a good part of the day talking about this. And this is all what they were talking about during this. And you can see some were for and against it. The honorable gentleman said that once they've chosen a representative, they must rely on his integrity and judgment during the period which he's elected. This one's, I hope the amendment will be not adopted, but if our constituents choose to instruct us, that they be left at liberty to do so. Do you see the extent of these words? If they have a constitutional right to instruct us, it infers that we are bound by those instructions, and we ought not to decide a constitutional questions by implication. So these guys are going back and forth. And this one I thought was interesting, that they were talking about here, what may be the consequence of binding a man to vote in all cases according to the will of others. He is to decide upon a constitutional point, and on this question, his conscience is bound by a solemn oath. So this could put the representatives in a serious dilemma. But this is the one that I want to talk about, the sovereign powers. This is Representative Jerry, Elbridge Jerry from South Carolina. And he said, now, though, I don't believe the amendment would bind us, yet I think the people have a right both to instruct and bind them. Do gentlemen conceive that on any occasion the instructions would be so general as to proceed from all our constituents? If they do, it is the sovereign will, for gentlemen will not contend that the sovereign will presides in the legislature. So this is what they're talking about. Exercising the right of sovereignty is something, if all of the people want something, that's the sovereign will of the people. So, for example, one of the things I'm putting out in my campaign is I literally guarantee term limits, because we're going to assert these constitutional rights. I'm going to go out to all the people and I'm going to ask you to co-sign a remonstrance with me. And we're going to present that to the General Assembly. And based on a study from the United States Congress on term limits, poll after poll is showing 82% of the people want term limits. Well, if 82% of us want term limits, that's the sovereign will of the people. And we're going to hold these members of the House and the Senate to their oath to support the Constitution of this state, that the people have a right to alter our form of government, to reform our government, and to exercise the right of sovereignty. And so since we're asserting these rights, then they have a duty to immediately enact the statutory term limits that I will write into legislation, as well as to start the 4-year process to amend the Constitution to forever enshrine term limits for senators, representatives, and judges. We'll be talking more about that. Now, I want to give you an example of the actual exercise of this right. I'll share my screen here again. And let's go look. This is the announcement of my remonstrance on the Tennessee House floor.
Next order, Mr. Clerk. Petitions and memorials. Mr. Clerk. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Rule 15, we have a brief statement regarding a petition of remonstrance statement filed by Representative Hulsey. It reads, I'm approaching the Tennessee House Chief Clerk on behalf of Mr. John Gentry with this petition and statement. Involves a petition of grievances. 1, unconstitutional and void statutes. 2, failure to address grievances. 3, judicial reform. 4, reinstitution of constitutionally guaranteed rights. Signed, Bud Hulsey, Tennessee State Representative.
So as a result of that remonstrance, and that was just me as a single citizen complaining about corruption in the judiciary, as a result of that, they vacated the entire Tennessee Board of Judicial Conduct. It was about 14 judges removed from office. Chris Kraft, Timothy DeCenza, Disciplinary Council, those guys are all gone, out of there. And then they reconstituted that agency with 8 judges, 4 attorneys, and 6 citizens. that are appointed by various high-ranking officials like the Speaker and the Governor, I think, appoint members to the board, the new Board of Judicial Conduct. And there's still some big problems with that agency, but they made an effort, and that was because of just one citizen exercising the right of remonstrance. And so I'm trying to teach the people out there that these are not empty words in our Constitution. These senators, representatives, judges, governor, they all swear an oath to uphold the Constitution. Power is inherent in us. We have an unalienable, indefeasible right to reform or alter our form of government, and we have the right to exercise our sovereignty, our supreme power over government. And when we start to do this, and there's many things I think that we can unite on. Term limits, very obviously, almost all of us want it. Election integrity. Who doesn't want election integrity? So we just need to get together and talk about how are we going to accomplish these things, and then we present our remonstrance to the General Assembly and force their hand to obey the sovereign will of the people out there. Now, I'm fighting this in the General Assembly because we actually have a right to orally address the General Assembly. When I do this term limits, as governor, I have the power to convene the General Assembly, and that's how I will present term limits to the General Assembly, is exercising the governor's power to convene them. But the people, the citizens, also have a right to address them. Remember, in Section 22, we have a right to apply to those invested with the powers of government by address or remonstrance. Citizens have a constitutional right to orally address them. And these guys are so corrupt, and I'm fighting them in court. But I want to show you one last thing here. I'll share my screen. So this is North Carolina's Constitution. And you remember in the Tennessee Constitution, the Tennessee Constitution said that in Section 31 that we have a right of exercising sovereignty, giving respect to the federal Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Constitution of North Carolina. And they said they gave respect to the Constitution of North Carolina because Tennessee was ceded by the state of North Carolina to the federal government. We became the territory north of the Ohio River. But previously, Tennessee was part of North Carolina. Our original state statutes came from North Carolina Code. But in the North Carolina Constitution, the people have the right to assemble together, to consult for their common good, to instruct their representatives, and they specifically say, and to apply to the General Assembly for redress of grievances. So now our Constitution says apply to those invested with the powers of government. So anybody invested with the powers of government, we have a right to make application by oral address or by a written remonstrance. So anyone invested with powers of government, school boards, the governor, anybody that is invested. And the General Assembly, what I'm fighting them in court right now, Speaker Sexton, corrupt Speaker Sexton, is the Tennessee Constitution giving respect to the North Carolina Constitution, and the North Carolina Constitution says that they have a right to petition the General Assembly. So our Constitution, we have a right to apply to those invested with powers of government. Very obviously, from the North Carolina Constitution, those invested with the powers of government includes the Tennessee House of Representatives and the Tennessee Senate. And we have a constitutional right to orally address them. What these guys are saying effectively is the people are no longer the sovereign. We, the entrenched political elites, we are the sovereign. We are the ruler. And I do not accept to be ruled by any man. My only sovereign is God Almighty. And for these corrupt senators and representatives in there to deny a fundamental right of citizens to address them, power is inherent in us. We have the right to exercise sovereignty. We have a right to instruct our representatives, and they swore an oath to uphold those rights. And to say that we don't have a right to address them is absolutely absurd. It's a violation of our Constitution. I'm working very hard on that. But what I'm trying to teach you and what I'm trying to educate the people of this state is we do not have to take this. We do not have to accept this oppression. And like the Tennessee Constitution says, if we do accept it, it's absurd, slavish, and destructive of the good and happiness of mankind to not resist tyranny. So what I'm doing is I'm teaching you that your rights, it's clear. You can see what they talked about in the first Congress about the sovereign will of the people. You can see what's in our Constitution. We just need to believe in ourselves again. We need to put out the effort that our forefathers put out and stop being apathetic. So this session was about educating you that power is inherent in the people and we have the right to exercise sovereignty, and how we exercise that right is through the right of petition, the right of remonstrance in Tennessee Constitution, Article 1, Section 23. I'll be continuing to do these classes. Probably the next session, I'm going to go over just some of the gross, intentional, blatant violations of our state constitution by our Tennessee government to help you understand how these violations affect us and how they cause dissatisfaction. So that'll be the next session. That I won't be doing it next Saturday because I'm going to be down in Cornersville for a straw poll. But I'll be back the Saturday after that, and we'll run through these violations that Tennessee government is in. I hope you spread word of this civics training session and my campaign for governor for the state of Tennessee. Share these posts out there, talk about it amongst yourselves. Email me for a copy of the Constitution. I'll be happy to send you one. And thank you for standing with me and taking this time with me. God bless you all. And in God we trust. John Gentry for governor 2022.